So I got a haircut, finally, which is great news, but unfortunately it has now reminded me of how big my forehead actually is, which is probably why people call it a 5-head. Two things before we get into the video. Number one, Q&A, doing one in a few weeks. So drop your questions in the comment section below or send them to me on Instagram, handle, bless. Doesn't have to be fitness related, it can literally be anything you want, and I shall choose as many as I can and answer them. So please bring the source, I would like that a lot. Number two, the TFNL Discord server is now live, as you may have seen from Instagram or Facebook. Basically, Discord is a communications app which is available on mobile, tablet, desktop, etc. What it is you join individual servers, like the TFNL one, in which there'll be loads of sub-channels of, let's say, general, random, video games, lifting, etc. And you can basically talk about whatever you want, doesn't have to be fitness related, with other members of the server, without having to share personal information. And it's just another means of people getting together and talking, communicating, bouncing ideas off each other, etc, etc. That'll be linked in the description down below. All you have to do is click sign up, or if you're already signed up, bless, and join, sorted. That easy. And it's free. But now, we crack on with the video. Coach Greg. Coach Greg is on the agenda today. His last name, I will butcher it. Greg Doucette, maybe. Mock me in the comment section if I'm wrong, I'm sure I am. And who is he? He's a former or current IFBB Pro bodybuilder, so he's a big boy. He has a YouTube channel, along with other social medias, in which he focuses on uploading 50,000 times per day, rates consistency and frequency. Maybe I should get some tips off him. Most of his popular videos are ones in which he calls people out, so he basically goes for BS in the industry, gives his honest opinion on it. Sounds familiar. He's basically bringing the source. He's not the raw source, that's us with the raw source. Most of this calling out tends to be surrounding who's natural and who's not. So basically his videos are 5 years old, but he's just doing them now. So he's going back to the times when everyone's calling out fake natties and when Blaha was getting sued by Mike O'Hearn for doing just that. When YouTube was in its prime, I would say, in the fitness industry, it was fantastic. I can't really mock him for being behind on the times because so am I. And I came across his channel because some of his 50,000 daily uploads kept sliding into my recommended and I couldn't help but have a gander. And as a whole, I was pleasantly surprised. Once you get past the mass uploads and actually choose a video that actually tickles your pickle, it's not bad. I didn't expect a lot, but what I did get was a mental comparison between him and the bird from Aladdin. But then I took a bit of a deeper dive into his other social medias, like his Instagram. I put together a bit of a list of things I've noticed, some trends, and we're going to go through that list together. I have a whiteboard, as you'll see. Sick. So number one, as we've covered, sauce. The man loves sauce. I love sauce. You probably love sauce. Therefore, we all have a mutual love for sauce. Can't complain. Number two, PEDs. He loves calling people out for PED use. He loves calling people out for faking or lying about their PED use. He loves the PEDs. Which leads us on to number three, PEDs again. As an IFBB pro bodybuilder, one can make a fair assumption that these pro bodybuilders within this federation are most likely not natural. Greg openly admits the fact that he is not natural. He often posts about it on his Instagram, in which he will show pictures of when he was natural and pictures of when he was in his prime, and then would claim that he was abusing PEDs back then, which is why he looked that way. Fair enough, I appreciate the honesty. But then goes on to often mention the fact that he's no longer doing so. He is now merely on HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, a much lower dose than he would have been on when he was abusing the PEDs. But that's when things get a bit uncertain. I appreciate his honesty about his former use. I appreciate that he calls people out for lying about their use. Fantastic. I don't know if I necessarily believe that he maintains the amazing physique he has on HRT, because I was under the impression, from what I've heard, that when you're off it, or at least on a very low dose in comparison to what he probably would have been on back in the day, you can't really maintain it. And yeah, he's a bit smaller, but as a whole, he's done a pretty good job at maintaining not just the size, but the year-round leanness, the dryness of the skin, that kind of look he has. I know he's been training for a lot of years and probably was running PEDs for a lot of years, but that does make me question whether he's being entirely honest about how much he's actually taking. I have no evidence of this. These are merely assumptions and opinions I'm making based on what I've seen and the little knowledge I have of PEDs, so I may well be wrong. And the fact that he has to constantly remind people that he once abused them but is now running HRT and is basically on such a low dose, blah blah blah, that repetitive enforcement kind of leads me to believe that he might be trying to convince people of something that isn't necessarily true. He may actually be trying to convince himself of something that isn't necessarily true. Sometimes people within the industry will actually claim that if they're taking less than a certain amount, they're basically natural. Greg doesn't claim he's natural by any means, but perhaps the low dose he's on in comparison to what he used to be on back in the day is what he would consider HRT, but what doctors might not. But we move on. Number 4, cookbook. The man loves to cook, and he loves to tell people he loves to cook, which makes a nice change, because oftentimes a lot of names in the industry will push out and charge people for generic programs, but at least he can now charge people for something that is kind of meant to be generic in the grand scheme of things, which is a cookbook. Which leads us on to point number 5, cookbook again, following the theme of repetition. I should have really alternated those, PEDs, cookbook, PEDs, cookbook, because it doesn't always go PD, PED, cookbook, cookbook. Sometimes a bit of variation there. Go away from the list, let's look at his training. How he trains and how he shows he trains on Instagram. There's not mass amounts of training footage. Most of the posts on his Instagram either follow the theme of point 2, 3, 4 or 5. But when you do see his training, he has a somewhat different approach to things. He talks about how he bases his intensity and volume of a muscle group on how sore that muscle group gets. So his biceps don't get very sore, therefore he hits them with high volume and high intensity, but his hamstrings do get very sore, so he reduces those variables accordingly. Which is interesting because I was under the belief from what I've been taught in the past, again I may be wrong, that DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness, has no correlation to the effectiveness of a workout, but more so to the introduction of a new stimulus. So if you were to do a movement you've never done before, more often than not, you'll probably feel sore, provided you've done it properly and with adequate intensity and volume. So in that regard, his training is a bit different. It clearly works for him. As I've said before, he looks fantastic. But again, you've got to remember, this is coming from my limited knowledge of PEDs and just what I've heard around the internet and the research, that when you are on said enhancements, you can't necessarily train the same way you would as if you were natural. I've never tried that training method, so I can't really bash it, as I have no idea whether it works or not. So, if you have any influencers you'd like me to source or not source, depending on whether they're good or bad, send them my way and I'll have a gander, I'll add them to the list, and we'll go from there. But as a whole, that's pretty much the video. From what I've seen, he's a good dude. He looks sick, and as a whole I'd say he's probably a decent person to follow if you can get over the repetition and 50,000 daily uploads. If you made it this far, I'll leave you with 2 things. Please ask a question for the Q&A. Please join the TFNL Discord server.
They're going to come up here, I think.
Yeah, nice.
Grid mark. Let's move out.
Nice. They're getting
There's quite
shot
a few
at.
people.